Welcome back to Say No To Lashon Hara. Today's class has been sponsored anonymously and is in the Zuchut like the entire project of the Refuah Shlema of Chana Bat Semafega. The Chafetz Chaim points out that we are all familiar that in the Torah there is a direct punishment that a person receives for speaking Lashon Hara, and that is the malady of Tzara'at. Tzara'at is translated as leprosy, but it does not mean the traditional medical leprosy. This was a miraculous malady that came upon a person where the Tzara'at could be either on their skin or on their clothes or even on the wall of their house. It described a certain set of marking that happened when a person spoke Lashon Hara. We find in the Torah that Moshe's sister Miriam receives this terrible punishment of Tzara'at because she spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, Moshe was Miriam's brother. She cared for him since he was a little baby. She was the one who put herself out for him. She loved him. She spoke her words of Lashon Hara, quote unquote, only to her brother Aharon. She spoke those words with the greatest of intentions, trying to help, but still, the fact that it came out in a negative way indicated that there was an element of Lashon Hara that needed to be addressed. And she was immediately punished with Tzara'at. In fact, the entire Jewish people delayed traveling for an entire week until she was cured. We see from here that Lashon Hara is so harmful, it's so toxic, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu needed to build in an illness, a punishment that came immediately and was immediately visible in a physical way in a person's life. There's not a single other mitzvah or avera in the Torah where a person's punishment or reward happens instantaneously. And therefore, what we are seeing is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu went out of his way to illustrate this with Lashon Hara. The reason why God doesn't punish or reward immediately after a person does a mitzvah or a sin is because that would destroy a person's free will. You'd know that God was in charge. You'd realize that he was watching every move. If every time I did something wrong, I got punished, and every time I did something right, I got rewarded. That would eliminate a person's free will choice to decide to do something because something was morally correct or incorrect. So therefore, God doesn't usually do that. But the fact that Hashem went out of his way with Lashon Hara to do something different from any other commandment in the Torah, positive or negative, illustrates that God understood that this sin needed to have a barrier between it and everyone else. And therefore, God breaks, so to speak, his own rule. The Chafetz Chaim continues to say that there's a specific commandment in the Torah which says, Hishamer b'nega Tzara'at. Be careful with the plague of Tzara'at, says the Pasuk. And that means that you should be careful not to get Tzara'at, and as well also other commandments surrounding this idea of being careful with the nega, with the plague of Tzara'at. And when the Torah tells you to be careful from it, generally it means don't do the things that are going to bring it, which means the Torah is telling you not to speak Lashon Hara. So if we are looking for negative commandments where the Torah tells you not to do something, a second commandment here that we're addressing, other than the one that we spoke about yesterday, which is Lo telech rachilo, you should not go as a peddler, is that a person has an obligation to not get Tzara'at. And therefore, speaking Lashon Hara and not being worried about it is a violation of Hishamer b'nega Tzara'at. Today we don't have this Tzara'at, but the Torah's obligation of Hishamer nega Tzara'at still tells you to stay away from that action. Another idea or pasuk in the Torah, which you will transgress if you speak Lashon Hara, is Lifnei iver lo titen michshol, where the Torah says you should not put a stumbling block in front of the blind. Now, most people understand that what that means is don't put an actual block in front of someone who's blind. They'll trip on it. But the Gemara tells us that that means that you should not cause someone to stumble. It means when they say blind, that someone who does not see what's coming in front of him. When you cause someone to do a sin, any sin, that's called lifnei iver, in front of a blind man. The Chafetz Chaim explains that when you speak Lashon Hara, so not only did you speak Lashon Hara, but now all these people that listen to it, they are now have a stumbling block in front of them, because if they believe it, they also have a part in the sin of Lashon Hara. So if a person speaks Lashon Hara at the Shabbat table and his whole family's there, 5-10 people, then there's 10 transgressions of Lifnei Iver Lo Titen Mechshol, because you tripped up 10 blind people. Not only that, it also works the other way around. If someone is speaking Lashon Hara and you listen, then you also are transgressing not only the laws of Lashon Hara, but also the law of Lifnei Iver Lo Titei Mechshol. Why? Because if you would stop listening to him speaking, if you would walk out of the room, he would stop speaking. So therefore, by staying and listening, some people think, what am I doing? I'm doing nothing. I'm just sitting here. But if you are giving him an audience for his poisonous talk, you are enabling him as well to transgress that sin. It turns out then that a person might be fulfilling many, many averot with one line of Lashon Hara, because how many people are hearing what he has to say? Think about that idea in a world of WhatsApp or social media where the words can be sent out and then forwarded many, many, many thousands of times, thousands of sins from maybe one word. The Chafetz Chaim ends and he says that a person should never be sitting in a place where people are speaking Lashon Hara. Because in the example of the Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer told his son Hyrcanus, he said, my son, don't sit with groups that speak Lashon Hara or speak negatively about others, because those words they rise up to heaven and they're recorded. Imagine if every negative word you said was written down in a book. And anyone who participates in such gatherings, HaKadosh Baruch Hu considers that person as a member of a chaburat resha, of a group of people who do evil things. You're now part of a evil gang in the eyes of heaven, and every word that you've said has been recorded in Shamayim.